So obviously, I'm not Jen, but my name is Lilly. I've had the honor of speaking up here before in front of y'all, in front of past BiSci students, and I'm excited to be doing it again for our food lecture. So before I get into my story and why I felt called to speak today and why this was such a powerful lecture when I was a student, I want to put a question up. Two questions, actually, and have you take a minute to think about them, kind of warming us up to the idea of food, but more so what nourishment means to you. So whether you want to define it, maybe you have a story when it comes to nourishment, but just take a minute to think about it. And then once you're settled with the idea and you're pretty set, if you want to speak to your conversation partner, maybe speak to your TA, whoever's around you. So yeah, take a few minutes. What is nourishment? What is it to you?
I didn't want the email notification. I can dim the lights whenever.
Okay. Seems like we had a lot to say, and I think the mics are out, and I would love to hear what nourishment means to some of you. Maybe a story, or again, if we want to just define nourishment, if you want to raise your hand, the mics are out.
I can speak over here. I think for a lot of my life, I wasn't focused on nourishment, on nourishing my body. I think my main perspective on what it meant to be healthy was like to be skinny or to be like aesthetically attractive or whatever that means. Until recently, I've started to focus more on like how I can actually feed myself and nourish myself and like be fulfilled in my health, I guess. So that's what nourishment means to me, like to be fulfilled in my health.
Ooh, yeah. So consumption in maybe more ways than one. I like that. What else?
Me and my partners, we talked about how it's like a form of self-care. Like I know one thing that helps me when I'm stressed is like taking a step back and like going to get some food and like nourishing myself. So it's like a way to take care of myself while like I have so much going on. Like food has been there for me as sort of like a comfort item, like comfort food. So yeah.
Ooh, I love that. It's a source of life. It's energy, yeah.
Yeah, so I had a bit of a different relationship with food. I think when I was growing up, my parents made, they made dinner for me every night. We always ate together, and that was like a very communal thing. I think when I came to college, 4 years ago, it was difficult because it was never something that I really had to do for myself. And I think especially recently, I've been on some medication that suppresses my appetite, so I don't feel the need to eat. So it's been more of an annoyance to have to nourish myself, which I didn't realize without the I guess pain of feeling the need to eat, we would like it just is kind of something we have to do, and it's been something I've really been like thinking about.
Yeah, so maybe the responsibility aspect of food, but also I like that you pointed out community. I think I've found making meals with people is a lot more fun than just sitting alone staring at my phone or staring at a wall. So the community aspect is huge. Yeah.
For me, I feel like living in the dorm last year, it was hard to be well nourished and like eat good food. But now living in an apartment, I feel like sometimes vegetables are cheaper than like snacks and stuff. So I feel like this year I've been able to really nourish my body and like cook good stuff, which just makes me feel overall so much better than I did last year.
Nice. I love that.
We also yes, food is like very important for nourishment, but we were also talking about sleep and like what's very important to, I think that's another part of nourishment and making your body kind of feel good and your soul, like everything about that. And I think sleep's a very big important part of that as well.
It's huge to function. Yeah, it's vital. Sleep. Okay, maybe one more.
Yeah, so I'm a vegan, so I immediately just thought of how, like, going vegan, I had to relearn what I need to actually nourish my body, and it makes, like, being vegan has allowed me to, like, actually pay attention to what is going in my body and not just a bunch of chemicals. So I just think of nourishment as just, like, for me, a journey that I've had to take for the last couple of years.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So again, like the why of what we're eating, what we're putting in our bodies. Thank you for everyone that participated and for everyone for listening and taking in what nourishment means. It's something different to each of us. So I'm actually going to start with a paradox that's kind of where, I guess, the pinnacle of this story that I'm telling today. A paradox that I realized in my own life, that I witnessed, that I was a part of, that speaks to a bigger one here in the U.S. And so where I'm going to start is actually a job that I had previously, working at our little downtown Target. And so I quickly came to realize when I was being trained that something that we do during closing shifts at Target is our nightly cull. And so in the produce section, all the cold foods, the vegetables, everything, we are going around looking at expiration dates, and anything that's going to expire within 2 days, we're tossing. Because consumers, aren't going to get to it and they won't want to buy it if it's expired, right? And this also meant, so for products like dairy products, gallons of milk were being poured down the drain. And this is hard to visualize, but I'll show you in a minute a picture that I have. This felt catastrophic. And I don't mean to be dramatic or naive, but I didn't realize that this was happening in my workplace, that this was happening in grocery stores everywhere in State College, everywhere in the U.S. And we filled these giant trash bags full of food that was perfectly good to eat. But entire bags of apples and oranges because there was one bad spot, and that won't sell, right? And so this is where I'm starting. Our food paradox is, is food waste. And so the picture that you see, I actually went dumpster diving. I had enough. I was like, I double bagged the food that we were culling, that we were wasting, throwing out because it wasn't going to sell. And I went back after a closing shift, and this is one bag full. And that's on my kitchen table. So as I said, there's a bag of oranges, and one has bad spots, but it's still edible, right? Entire case of apples. I don't need to go through this whole table, but again, just to show you and represent the amount of waste that was happening here at a place that I worked, at a place that I was a part of. And so I have these words down here. I came to realize that at Target, and I don't mean to demonize the industry or the leaders that I was working with, my managers, but this is what we've built. This is the industrial food complex, that food is an item, it's a commodity, it's profit. People need to buy food that looks good, that isn't expired. And I was a part of this. And so I went to my team leads and I was like, first of all, I was kind of angry and pissed off because I'm a broke college student and I'll eat that food, like, before we throw it out. But it's policy. We can't. We're liable if, someone gets sick eating this. And so I ended up quitting for a number of reasons, but mainly because I just couldn't stomach this. I couldn't watch this or be a part of it anymore. And so just taking that experience, I'm sure all of us understand, maybe to the scale that we waste in the U.S., but here's just a little bit more facts and figures when it comes to what's really going on. Here in the U.S., 40% of our food ends up in the landfill. It's the number one material in our landfills is organic waste. And it sits there and it releases gases. And again, the catastrophe that I was witnessing, that this food just wasn't being eaten, also takes a toll on our planet. And so, if you want to continue reading those, but I'm going to keep going. I just wanted to point out, just again, to the scale that this is happening. And again, some further research, you might already be aware of food deserts in the U.S., but these are areas across our country where millions of people don't even have access to a grocery store where food is wasted. They may not even have a car, but if they do, in these food deserts, the only thing within, a mile or so or 5 miles is a convenience store, is a gas station where, we've all probably been in a gas station. It's not really food, right? It's those food-like substances, Doritos, sodas, candies, food that really isn't, in my opinion, nourishing. And so I just, again, wanted to point out a reality that millions of people in America, and maybe some of you even this is what your hometown looks like. And so looking at all the waste and looking at all these numbers and feeling that shock and feeling that anger and even guilt of being a participant in this, I came across this quote, and I think the main part I want us to focus on is the end, the part that I have bolded. So we have hungry people in the world. It's not an issue out there. It's here too in the U.S., but there are millions of people that are hungry. Is it that we don't have enough food for them? Is that what's going on? As this quote says, it's not really the issue. We have a surplus of food that we're producing, and that's being wasted. But is it a failure of the human heart? And that's a question and a statement I want you to keep in the back of your mind as I continue with my story, with my paradox. And also, I wanted to say this at the beginning. I hope that you're able to take in what I'm saying. You might not accept everything I say or even maybe fully understand it, but I hope that when we're here in this room, that we're taking things in through a lens of curiosity. So I hope questions are coming up. I hope stories from your own life are coming up, that you can take this in through your own lens of curiosity. And this brings me to part 2 of my paradox. And again, I'm going to relate it to a different job I had, different job experience, in total contradiction to what I did and witnessed working at Target. And so this was back in my hometown for, I think it was like 5 summers I had the opportunity to do this. So I'm from Chattanooga in Tennessee, and our YMCA has a food and fun program. And so this is working with food insecure sites all around Chattanooga. I went in and mostly early mornings, like 5 a.m. I was helping prepare the food for most of the summers, and then I was packing them. And then I was able to take, it was usually around 100 meals, and I myself was going to 5 different sites as a site supervisor. And not only was I bringing a meal to the kids that I was able to work with and play with and laugh with, but we had activities and we had ways, to engage them, to learn. And this was really fun. It was a really fun job. I love working with kids, and I was also able to help my community, like one of our TAs shared, community building when it came to food. But it wasn't until the last summer that I worked there, and it was one of our, COVID summers where we weren't really able to interact with each other, and we weren't really at the sites with the children. And that's my brother up there. I did get to work with him, and he always was a bright spot in the workplace. But these summers, we were working with the parents. They were the ones picking up the meals. And I can't really explain the feeling that I got when these parents came to my sites to pick up 1 meal, or maybe 7 for their children, or a guardian or a grandparent picking up 1 meal with tears in their eyes, thanking us for being out there. one meal that that kid might not have otherwise. And again, I don't mean to be dramatic, but it touched me in a different way than working at Target did. And it was heartbreaking in a different way. Because for someone who has never gone a day in my life where there wasn't a meal that my parents were making, or I didn't have access to food, or I couldn't step outside a classroom and go to the hub and eat whatever I wanted, I couldn't really understand or fathom that people right next door, people in my community, didn't have that. That a paper bag meal meant that much to them. And so this is the other side, as I said, the contradiction to food waste is the food insecurity that's happening here in the US. And so just to go along with more of those, I think, striking facts and figures, whatever you want to call them. So like I said, there's over 1 billion hungry people that could be fed on less than 1/4 of what we waste here and in European nations and in the UK. And again, the toll that this takes on our environment, 25% of our water is used to grow food that's just going to end up in landfills. That's never going to be eaten. And again, I'm not trying to demonize the system or our actions, because I fail all the time. I fail and I feel guilty, and it's like I feel numb, and I'm kind of left wondering what to do. And so I have a theory. But before I went to get into my theory as to why this paradox exists, is it really a failure of the human heart that there's such catastrophic food waste and there's food insecurity at the same time? But before I get into that, we're going to watch a video. And again, this might be something similar to something you've seen in a different class or that you've taken the time to watch on your own. But we're going to take a few minutes to watch a video about an industry within our food complex. So, take it in. So taking that in, taking that video in, and maybe, sorry. There we go. Thinking about the process when it comes to having a live animal become food. Part of my theory as to why this paradox exists is that we don't really know this. We don't really think about the reality that animals face in large-scale meat industries, or plants, or our soil, or any kind of large-scale farming. They don't really show you that video when you're buying chicken nuggets, right? So you don't really have to think about it. I don't think it's partially a failure of the human heart, but it's also that we don't face it, or we don't fully understand when we are consuming these things. And I look at this picture of like a supermarket, and I've been in supermarkets like this, and it doesn't even look real. It's like, what even is on those shelves? What happened to the food to get to that point? Because I know even just 100 years ago, it was that you knew the farmer down the street that was giving you the meat that you were going to consume. You knew the process. It wasn't really traveling very far. And now we have food coming from all over, being exported, imported, this whole supply chain. And then it ends up on shelves, and we buy it. So, thinking about my story and my paradox, I wanted to imagine a different reality. I wanted something outside of this paradox because I couldn't accept it. And I was trying in a lot of different ways, but I'm going to keep going with the theme of my work experiences. I'll get back to that. I ended up at Refarm, which is 10 minutes away. It's here in State College. And I was connected to the food that I was growing in a lot of ways. And I was learning and witnessing and getting my hands dirty. I knew exactly the process of planting a seed, of watering it, of sunlight, of what it takes to cultivate food, nourishing food. And Refarm is farm to table. It's a restaurant. I was also then able to serve this food to people, that it was made with love. I knew the people that were making it with good intentions. Back to that aspect of community. Our food experiences don't have to be so disconnected. And Refarm is also a place that cares about its employees. They care about me, that I have a livable wage, that I have access to good food. And I'm going to go back to this. These are just 4 examples of dozens of organizations, of nonprofits that are doing the work too, that are doing it with thousands of people all over the world, here in the U.S. Do Good Chicken, they're taking surplus food waste from these grocery stores and feeding it to chickens that you can then consume. Another one, Olio, is in the U.S. It's an app, and it connects you to your neighbors and local businesses to share food so that it doesn't end up getting wasted. And again, this list goes on and on. So there is goodness and there is a different reality outside of this paradox, but I think it's the awareness that we don't have to be so disconnected. And I have a quote up here. Wendell Berry, who was a farmer, a Kentucky farmer. My mom got to hear him speak. He's also a poet and an author. But I want us to take in his words. He says, "A significant part of the pleasure of eating is in one's accurate consciousness of the lives and the world from which food comes." And I added a little bit to this quote. I hope he's okay with that. But also where it ends up. Because food waste is something, I already shared all of that, that I'm passionate about changing, that I'm passionate of not being as much of a participant in. And so I want to end with this idea that came from Doc, the author of our book, the creator of this course. He has a website that you were in past weeks engaging with, and this is from his food stepping stone. The idea that we can go from a passive consumer, I was a naive employee of a big corporation, being, wasting food and throwing it away, to someone, I feel a little bit more awakened today. I feel as if I'm an awakened participant, and I'm conscious of the food that I'm eating and where it's coming from. and I want to pass it off to someone who's going to continue our lecture, but I want to thank you again for letting me speak today and share my story in a lecture that means a lot to me.
Hello. Yeah, that works. Can I have the... Okay, what's going on? Thanks, Lily. Can we get another round of applause? That was awesome. So I want to continue this exploration of what Lily just talked about, our relationship with food, and what does it mean on our day-to-day lives. So coming from the idea of you are what you eat, you probably heard that. It's a popular slogan. My name's Pedro, by the way. I don't think I introduced myself. But you are what you eat. And what I'm taking into consideration today is also the possibility that you are how you eat. What would that mean? I know when DJ was talking last Wednesday, she was talking about how the connecting of Natives people is very strong with the earth. You know, and that made me very curious. Like, how do you cultivate that strong relationship? I want to be connected. I want to feel these things that are, you know, you've been reading this book and it talks about all these feelings that this guy is getting when he's exploring nature. And it's like, I want to feel that way. And so I asked her, and I was like, well, how come? Like, how do you cultivate that relationship? And a big part of it is that Natives people, they are connected to the life-making materials. They respect and they are aware. And so, and that goes to many ancient civilizations. You have the Egyptians, the god Ra is the sun. And so, bowing to the sun as the life-giving source that it is. Or the Native Americans have so many songs that honor the rain and the water. That is very much in our blood, carrying through all the nutrients of the food that we eat through our everyday lives, and it's essential for us to live. And you have in Buddhist tradition, the most famous and popular meditation that they have is called Vipassana, which is just sitting and paying attention to your breath. Now, if you hold your breath for 10 seconds or so, you will feel the urge to be connected. It takes 10 seconds. If you hold your breath right now, you will see that you need it. It's not something that you get a choice on. You are connected through breath, to all the trees. And so having that kind of awareness to the life-making materials. And I want to talk about my favorite source of life, which is earth, the four elements if you think about air, water, fire, and earth. Because it's eating. And I want to be respectful and acknowledge that. I know that many people have trouble in their relationship with food, and I hear you, and it's hard. But personally, in my life, that's one of my biggest joys, eating. God damn it. It's a good time, you know what I'm saying? But in that sense of relating to the life-making material, I mean, dude, who was born in the size that you are today? Anyone? Like, were you born the size that you are today? Like, dude, no. Like Doug over there. Doug is 6'3". If Doug was born when he was 6'3", his mom would probably not love him the way she does right now. And that's just the truth. You were born a baby. You were born so little. You know, you're like, in this lifetime, not too long ago, you were like this big, maybe. And what happened? Like, how come are you 6'3" right now? Like, what happened? You ate a bunch of food. And in the span, let me take my shoes off, man. This is not nice. You ate a bunch of food. And so in the span of a day, even if you eat a banana in the morning, by the end of the day, it's going to be human. Your body has the intelligence to transform food into human being. You know what I'm saying? Like, you hear me? It's the most complex piece of engineering in the whole non-universe, is the human body. And from the beginning of your morning, if you eat a banana, by the end of the day, it becomes human, aware of itself, and it can count constellations and create chemicals, stuff, make your jackets and your shoes and all this stuff. And now, coming to the source of connecting to earth is, where's your food coming from? How's your food come to be? Now, we explored how humans come to be. Now, how food comes to be. It was once a little seed, if you take an apple, for example, right? It was once a little seed, and then went into the soil, and then the sun came, and it hit the soil, and the soil warmed up, and the seeds started taking the nutrients from the soil. It started drinking some of the water, and it cracked. It cracked, and it started growing. And it turned into a tree. You're following. Yeah, I know you're following. And then it turns into a tree. And this tree made apples. And you ate the apples. And from baby, you went to full-grown adults. And so what your body is a bag of food. And what food is a combination of the four elements together. And so the idea of being connected, being one with nature, is, I know we hear these slogans all the time, and quite honestly, they don't mean much if we see them all the time and don't really practice with them. But it's so true. It's existentially true. The fact that you are Mother Earth, if you just take the time to be conscious of it. Your body, your flesh, is being remade every day with soil. Earth is a bunch of soil. You're a dirt bag, literally, if that's your relationship with soil. If you call soil dirt and you don't want to get dirty, it's most likely you're a dirt bag, or a soil bag, or another piece of Mother Earth. And so if you want to play with this, for 1 week, I challenge you, dude, you don't have to understand this on the way that I'm saying. You can just practice and play. You buy a bag of apples, and every day before you have any meals, you cut your apple in half horizontally, and you sit with it. And for 10 minutes, you just express your gratitude for all of the things that had to come to be for that apple to be sitting in your hand. Go through that whole process of the seed, be thankful for the seed, for the soil, be thankful for the soil, for the water, for the sunlight. Express your gratitude before you take your first bite. And when you go to take a first bite, you smell that apple. And you imagine, how is it going to taste? And how it's going to crack on your mouth, and it's going to be juicy. And you realize that by the end of the day, that very apple is going to be you. I assure to you, if you do that for 1 week, you don't have to listen to me talk about this. You will know it in your heart that you are a part of Earth. And if you do that whole bag of apples every day in the morning, by a month, you will never forget it. By the end of the month. So play with it. It's nice. It's much more nice than coming to class and listening to a dude talk about it. If you just play with it. It's a living possibility that we get to explore. And so consider that. How much time we got? Okay. So, that's the sweet side of the story, That's how you connect and how you feel all the joys of being a part of nature and connecting with each other and the planet. And that's really fun. But we are also living through an existential moment for human society. And there is a sad side to every story. And so fruits and vegetables and grains like wheat have half the micronutrients they used to. If it's not in the soil, it's not in our food. And so through the practice of modern industrial agriculture, we have in many ways depleted our soil. If you think about it, when a machine plows through the soil, it opens the soil up. And the first 3 inches of the soil that are usually filled with microorganisms, bacteria, worms, and living things that make the soil a living thing. When the sun hits on it directly, you've been to the beach without sunscreen at some point. It burns. Imagine what happens to a worm. It dies. And so the soil is very much dying. And if the soil doesn't have the nutrients that are life-giving nutrients, your food won't have it either. If you eat 1 orange today, no. There's a study done in 2011 that says that you have to eat 8 oranges to get the same amount of vitamin your grandparents will get from eating 1 orange. Now, in a show of hands, who here eats 8 oranges? That's what I thought. I never eat 8 oranges in a day. I don't have that kind of time or that kind of hunger for oranges. But that's effed up, dude. You're not getting the nutrients that you need to be human because your food doesn't have it, because the soil doesn't have it. And so what does that mean? Like I've never eaten 8 oranges and I'm doing just fine. I think at least that I'm doing just fine. I don't know any different. The same way that kids in the next generation, they won't know any different. But you don't want to be the parent that has to explain what fresh water tastes like to your kid. How would you do it? You just can't do that. What does it taste like to take a bite of a fresh orange in a summer day? You just can't explain that. And they will never know, and they might not miss it. But the truth is, we just lived through a global health pandemic. I know that myself personally, I know people that have lost people, and I think that everyone in this room knows somebody who lost somebody. And that hurts. That's not nice. People that didn't need to pass away, they're not with us anymore. And so what's that mean? Well, COVID largely is an upper tract infection. And immunologists, they say that if you don't have enough vitamin A, B6, B12, C, calcium, iron, folate, magnesium, and zinc, your likelihood to get these infections is higher. And so I'm not saying that we wouldn't have a global pandemic if we ate 8 oranges a day. I'm just saying that the toll would have been much smaller. And if we can save 1 life, that's enough. If we can save a couple, that would be awesome. Just by changing the way that we look at soil. And so I've been a part of this movement called Safe Soil. And so, Jamie, if you can play this video for me real quick.
We are talking about climate change, carbon emissions, and global warming and various other aspects. But we are not addressing soil. Soil is the habitat upon which zillions of lives thrive. Once there is no richness in soil, then you have forsaken the planet in many ways. Every responsible scientist in the world and the UN agencies are clearly saying we have only 80 to 100 harvests left. That means approximately 45 to 50 years of agricultural soil left on the planet. By 2045, we will be producing 40% less food than what we are producing right now, and our populations will be 9.3 billion people. The food shortages that could manifest in the next 25 years, the consequences of that is unimaginable. Civil wars will unfold across the world once there is food shortage. What we are facing now is soil extinction. Why is soil becoming extinct? Where is it going away? What is happening to our soil? We must understand, if you add organic content to sand, sand will turn into soil. If you remove all organic content from the soil, soil will become sand. In normal agricultural soil, the minimum organic content should be between 3 to 6%. The most minimum is 3%. At least this minimum to keep the soil alive, to keep the soil as living soil is a must. Agricultural soils across the world, the depletion is so heavy. In most countries, more than 50% of the topsoil is already gone in the last 100 years. The nutrient levels have dropped significantly. The level of micronutrients you would get from your food in early 20th century to what you are getting from the same food now has dropped 90%. If you ate 1 orange in 1920s, what you got from it, now in 2020, if you have to get the same, you will have to eat 8 oranges. This is what we have done to our food.
Soil is the biggest ecosystem on the planet, and so few people know anything about it. 1 teaspoon of healthy soil probably contains more microbes than there are people on Earth.
The microbial life in the first 12 to 15 inches of topsoil is the basis of our existence. It is this magic beneath our feet which has produced the life that we are. This first 12 to 15 inches of soil is the basis of life for 87% of life on this planet, including you and me.
We have to begin to recognize that what we call our soil, Mother Earth.
So, Jamie, can you pull up a website called consciousplanet.org? Jamie, pull it up. Get the reference? I wanted to do this. I don't know. I thought it was funny. So this guy, he's traveling across many nations in Europe to deliver policies so he can raise the organic content of the soil to at least 3%. And that's very much doable in so many countries. And so, Jimmy, if you can scroll down, here you can find why to save soil and find information on that. You can keep scrolling, Jimmy. Learn about the crisis and the different layers in which are involved in it. You can learn about soil. The solution is to bring back at least 3% of organic matter to the soil. And go down one more. And the plan is that we need supportive policies in every nation. It's not just individual action. The individual action is good for our own lives, but we need policies to happen. And for that, we need people to be informed. And so, you are people. If each one of us, you know that you can reach so many people through your technology. And so if you are informed and you know what to tell people, policies are going to happen. That's the value, the richness of living in democracies. Is if you're informed and you know what you want, and we can all get behind something. We can make things happen. Let's make it happen. So if you're curious, I say check out this website. They have all kinds of resources, videos, pictures, facts, everything you need to know, all the instructions. So I encourage you to check it out if this is something that speaks to you. We have one last thing for you, Lilly.
Yeah, so we still have a few minutes. Thank you. We have a few minutes. This is your pack-back question. And so I think something that was missing from what I had to share, and maybe also Pedro, is what dictates your choices when it comes to nourishment. I want to recognize that what's at the dining hall or what's on campus does affect your food choices. Where you live, how much money you have. So think a little bit about that and let us know. What's dictating how you nourish yourself? And then lastly, how could you cultivate more consciousness when it comes to food? Because my reality, my ratatouille moment. Oh. Hello? Oh, okay. Sorry. My ratatouille moment of imagining a different reality outside of the paradox that I was a part of made sense for me, but maybe it doesn't for you, and maybe it's not that simple. So this is your pack-back question. I don't think we have time, but something else I wanted to introduce today is a challenge for the month of April. We'll be posting it. We can do it on Wednesday. Okay, but I appreciate you all listening to both of us.
Thank you.